We were shown Father Maskell's office, and the lady said, these girls are so lucky. If they have any problems at all, they have Father Maskell here to guide them in anything they might need help with. And I was naked within the first 5-10 minutes of being in his office.
If you were admitted into Archbishop Keough, it was quite the honor. It was the shining star of high schools.
My first experience with him, honestly, was when I went to the chapel and I had this voice in my head saying, you know, he's really creepy. I don't like the way he looks at people, but he is, you know, God's representative on earth. There was a real struggle inside of me whether to listen to that voice or not.
When I went to Neil Magnus. As he's talking, I'm staring at that ear and he's masturbating. And so when it was over, he said, I don't know that God can forgive you. I'm going to have to do a lot of praying on this, and I'll get back to you.
These are the horrific stories of sexual abuse at an all-girls Catholic high school in Baltimore. Jean, Teresa, Gloria, and Michelle attended Archbishop Keough in the late 60s and early 70s.
I would be sitting in class, and over the loudspeaker it would say, Terry Harris, please report to Father Maskell's office. And you had to go. We would see other girls lined up outside of his office. As I would go out, another one would go in. It was a parade.
I would have periods of time where all I could remember was him saying, you know, you can unbutton your shirt, and me having this tab to drink, and the next thing I know, I'm leaving.
The school was part of a shocking report from the Maryland Attorney General's office released in April, which documents more than 600 survivors of child sexual abuse by clergy members of the Archdiocese of Baltimore. Out of the 156 clergy members listed as abusers, only 10 were still alive at the time of the report's release. All 10 names were redacted.
During those counseling sessions, it devolved into horrific experiences.
Neil Magnus was a priest and teacher at Keough, and Joseph Maskell was the chaplain and counsellor. Magnus died in 1988, Maskell in 2001. Combined, their names appeared in the report 243 times.
I got something called mononucleosis. Both of those men came to my house, and they would rape me in my own bed, in my own house.
One time, he had called me to his room, and he thought maybe I could tell him if there were any other girls who needed his help. And I said, I don't know anybody else. And he said, now you have to remember what I'm protecting you from, what I'm keeping your secret. I don't think it's asking too much for you to, and I can hear me start to tell him somebody's name. And I don't know how many people I told him needed his help. People have killed themselves because of what he did in that room. And if I ever thought I told him about someone who has killed themselves,
He told me, nobody's going to believe you over me. Nobody's going to believe you over a priest.
My life just went to hell.
at the end of the whole thing, I left and washed my hands. And I never remembered it until I was 39.
Jean and Teresa filed a $40 million lawsuit against Maskell and the Archdiocese of Baltimore, among others, for abuse in 1994. They were only known to the public as Jane Doe and Jane Roe.
It wasn't until later that I got really angry and upset and realized how this has really robbed me of my life.
Their lawsuit was dismissed, because their claims were ruled to be outside the statute of limitations, occurring decades before the allegations came to light.
The world wasn't ready to hear this.
In 2002, the Archdiocese of Baltimore released a list of priests and brothers accused of child abuse, naming both Maskell and Magnus.
I don't feel like we're like friends, like other friends that I have, but I feel like we're more sisters in a very private club.
Together, survivors from Keogh have been fighting for justice for decades, currently working to get names unredacted from the report. That includes names of church officials who, quote, facilitated and perpetuated child sexual abuse within the Archdiocese. The Archdiocese has not released the names of the 10 living clergy members accused of abuse, but says none are still employed by the organisation.
Where's the accountability? Why did they black out their names? And to me, it screams guilt as loud as you can.
Days after the report was released, the Child Victims Act passed, lifting the statute of limitations for when certain civil child sexual abuse lawsuits can be filed in Maryland.
I just want people to be safe. I want the children of the future not to ever be in a situation that I was in.
The Maryland Attorney General's office is currently investigating the Archdiocese of Washington and the Catholic Diocese of Wilmington for potentially covering up sexual abuse spanning decades. Both organizations say they are fully cooperating.
It was a royal crime, and a lot of people knew it. And I hope they all burn in hell, because they're not getting blamed or accountable here. I hope they all burn in whatever it is that we burn in.
The Archbishop of Baltimore released an apology after the report was released, calling it a reprehensible time in the Archdiocese's history.